Olá, está no ar mais um Nuclearcast, o seu canal sobre o setor nuclear no Brasil. Eu sou Emanuele Bordalo e apresento esta temporada a convite da ABEDAN, Associação Brasileira para o Desenvolvimento de Atividades Nucleares. Hoje eu tenho o prazer de receber no nosso estúdio Justin Friedman, Senior Advisor do Departamento de Estado americano. How, Justin? How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here in Rio. This is my first time here, and I'm really excited to be with you today.
It's our pleasure. So, Justin, I want to start asking you about the nuclear field. You have a long career in the sector. What major changes have you seen in the sector over the past few years?
So I have to correct you just a little bit. So I've been in the energy sector for about 25 of my 30 years as an American diplomat. And I started working on hydrocarbons. My time focused on nuclear has been more in the last 10 years, and especially the last 4 years where I've been working as senior advisor. And so I'll start out with what's the same before I talk about what's different. What's the same in my mind is that energy security is national security. That's something I said 25 years ago. We used different words, but the meaning was the same. And so that applies today even more than it did apply 25 years ago, because we found out that some countries use energy supply as a political weapon, and that's never been acceptable. And so that has always been a key factor driving energy. What's changed is that the resurgence of nuclear power, in my mind, has been driven by a need for firm baseload power across the industrial spectrum. We saw that as countries look at aging hydrocarbon plants, aging coal plants, and they want to upgrade to something newer, they're looking at nuclear energy. Countries that have extensive renewable grids need something firm as part of their baseload, and they want nuclear. But also, even more so, we're seeing data centers. Excuse me. I
No
just got
problem.
off the airplane a couple hours,
No problem.
so I will be drinking water a lot. But countries and companies want firm baseload power to drive data centers and other industrial applications. And all these are combining together to create stronger demand than we've ever seen in the past.
Great. And looking ahead, what are your main bets for the future of nuclear energy? Like, should we expect to see more nuclear applications becoming part of our daily lives?
I think so. And, I talked about firm baseload power. Part of our daily life is energy, being able to plug into the wall to turn on our TV, or I had to iron my shirt today when I got off the airplane, but also to recharge our phones. That's everybody understands that. But what we're seeing nuclear applied for is new applications. For example, there's a company in the US called Energy that's partnered with Dow Chemical, and they're building an SMR plant to provide electricity, but more importantly, industrial heat for the petrochemical plant. So industrial companies are looking at nuclear. And I mentioned data centers. Data centers need firm baseload power, but we're also exploring using nuclear to power hydrogen generation. And we're doing a very interesting project doing commercial scale deployment of nuclear to power hydrogen generation and ammonia generation in Ukraine. And so we're seeing that nuclear can be part of energy security, but also part of food security.
Oh, that's awesome. Why the U.S. has shut down some nuclear plants in the recent years, there's also a growing investment, like you said, in the small modular reactors. What are the main advantages of this technology, and what are the biggest challenges it still faces?
So first, let me correct you on one point, because yes, some power plants have been shut down because in the past they were not economically competitive. But what we've seen in the last year and a half is 3 shut down nuclear power plants in the United States, traditional light water reactors, are being reopened by companies like Holtec, who is here today in Rio at the
That's
conference.
true.
Microsoft is powering the restart of another reactor, and another utility company is reopening a power plant.
Big
So
techs are investing.
because they need that firm baseload power.
Yes.
SMRs are adding to the mix because of all the reasons we've talked about. And so there is this resurgence, and we see it for large baseload power, such as this company, GE Hitachi. It's a partnership between the American company and the Japanese company. They are have a construction permit to build a reactor in Ontario. Just today, there's a press report that they have applied for a construction permit in Tennessee, the U.S. state of Tennessee, and then they're going to build their third reactor probably in Poland. So we're seeing international interest in these technologies, and deployments are growing every day.
Oh, that's amazing. And when it comes to energy transition, what are the key benefits of nuclear power compared to other low carbon energy sources?
Well, we've hinted at it already, but the advantage of nuclear is density. What that means is that most of the SMR vendors are talking about a plant design that can deliver 300 megawatts of energy. Some plus or minus, but that's a good number to work from.
Yes.
They fit that 300 megawatt power plant, including the safety zone, inside a football pitch. And when I say football pitch, I mean football pitch, but also an American football pitch. They're about the same size. If we were to use that same amount of land for a solar panel, for solar panels, we could get maybe, I have to look up my numbers. Excuse me for looking at my notes. I don't have these numbers memorized. But because I want to give our listeners the real answer here. So for 1 megawatt of solar, you would need about 3 football fields.
Whoa.
So for 300 megawatts, you need 900 football fields of land. So that's when I talk about energy density. It's that you can, in a small space, you can generate a lot of power. So wind is the same thing. 1 megawatt turbine can sit on about 1 football pitch worth of land. But when you have to space them out so they don't interfere with each other, you're talking 1,000 or more hectares of land. So clearly the density is key. But the other thing that is driving nuclear is that it's firm power. That means when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow, nuclear is still generating power. And those two factors, clean and firm, are driving this renaissance. Wrong word. The resurgence of nuclear energy. We don't say renaissance.
And it's impossible to talk about nuclear energy without addressing safety. In your view, how has the sector evolved in this area since like Fukushima? Would you say that these plants are better prepared for environmental disasters, for example?
So first off, what has driven nuclear in the United States as a government is security, safety, and non-proliferation. That's my mission, is to promote security and safe and non-proliferation friendly nuclear power. So safety has always been a priority. Yes, there have been accidents, and unfortunately, they happened, but the industry has learned the lessons. And so today's nuclear power, the generation 3+ reactors, and I'll point to Westinghouse as one example, their AP1000, if there's a loss of power like what happened in Fukushima, they have natural passive circulation inside their reactor to keep cooling for several days, so there's time to respond to a situation like that. Then you look at some of the SMR designs, light water and more advanced reactors, and they are by design safe. Several companies talk about, and NuScale is one of them, so I'll mention them. They talk about walk away safe. That means if they have to turn off the switch for whatever reason, let's say there's a tornado or a hurricane, the reactor stays safe. There's constant cooling. There's no need for a human to intervene. And so they can also start the reactor after a hurricane cuts off the grid. They do call it a black start, meaning they start from zero. And that's lessons learned in engineering. Then when you talk about generation 4 reactors, these are the high temperature gas or the molten salt or liquid metal cooled reactors. They use the physics of uranium, and I'm not a physicist, so I'm careful here. My cousin is a physicist. But as I understand it, as the fuel heats up, the molecules of uranium separate more. And so if the fuel gets too hot, they get too far apart and the amount of fission goes down. So they essentially cannot fail. And there's a very interesting video that I would invite your listeners to Google and look for. There was a test reactor in the United States. It operated from 1960 to 1990, give or take. And they did the Chernobyl experiment. They turned off the circulation of coolant through the reactor. And what happened? Exactly what the physics predicted. The temperature went up, but it got to a certain point, and then the nuclear reactions stopped happening because of the heat. So it shut itself off without any intervention. It's a fascinating experiment to watch, because it was done just after or maybe even just before the Chernobyl accident. And it demonstrated that these new technologies are incredibly safe. And so those are inherent in the designs that are being built today by U.S. industry.
That's very fascinating, because today with climate change and everything, like disasters have becoming more common. So you have like strategies in the sector to prevent them, to damage any reactors. That's very good to hear.
It is great. And it's a testament to the investments the United States has put into this technology through our Department of Energy. Now, we've put billions of dollars in the research side. And now with some of the advanced reactor demonstration programs, we're putting billions into commercial deployment. So, once the firsts are built, we're going to see lots more of these reactors in the United States and also simultaneously around the world.
Great. We're living in a time of geopolitical tensions and where nuclear rhetoric has become more prominent. How have global dialogues on non-proliferation adapted to this new scenario? Like you mentioned, you're working for non-proliferation. How are you working on that?
So our starting point is, let me say the phrase that I always start with, which is the United States works in the nuclear space to the highest standards of safety, security, and non-proliferation. And that has been our bedrock principle from day one. But also our bedrock principle going back 70 years is that we will share our technology. This goes back to President Eisenhower's famous Atoms for Peace speech and the creation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and the creation of the International Atomic Energy Agency. And so these bedrock pieces of our policy have driven us for 70 years in the nuclear space. And what's interesting is that today we're still talking about the Non-Proliferation Treaty as that bedrock piece of policy. And just 2 weeks ago up in New York, we had the preparation conference for the Non-Proliferation Treaty Review. And I had the pleasure after New York of meeting with Brazil's head of delegation, who came to Washington and had a full day of discussions. And we talked about the importance of using these bedrock treaties, these bedrock principles, to advance our civil nuclear energy programs. We talked about 2 additional add-ons to the treaty. One is the additional protocol and the opportunity it would create for Brazil to enhance its role in the international nuclear non-proliferation community. And we also talked about something called the Convention on Supplemental Compensation, which is important to protecting companies, but also protecting customers from the risks of damage, because the risk is extremely small thanks to technological advances, but financial companies won't take that risk until they have some kind of protection.
Great. And finally, what advice will you give to professionals who are considering an international career in the nuclear sector?
I would say go for it. There's a classic American movie where a man comes up to a recent college graduate and says, "My son, get into plastics." Now, today I would say, my son or my daughter, get into nuclear, because the field is growing. The United States and over 30 countries have committed to expanding our nuclear presence and nuclear power generation by 3 times by 2050. That will require a huge investment in capital, but also we need people to build these machines. We need people to operate them. And so if you're interested in engineering, nuclear engineering, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, all these fields are going to grow through the nuclear space. But also, it's not just jobs for people with college educations. There's a huge demand for craft skills. Welding, nuclear welding is a step up from regular welding because the safety tolerances are that much stronger. Electricians and electrical work, construction work and construction design, all these craft skills are going to be in high demand as we build out the infrastructure for our safe and secure future.
And do you see Brazil and the US collaborating together in the nuclear field?
Well, that's why I'm here. I want to do more. I think we've done a lot. Companies like Westinghouse have been very involved in this nuclear sector here. Companies like Holtec, both of which are represented today, have been working here for years. And I'd like to see that grow. And sometimes it's a little bit of diplomacy has to get done. And sometimes it's a little bit of marketing and sales. But together, I see a huge future for the United States and Brazil to work together on peaceful, safe, and secure nuclear energy.
That's great. Thank you very much, Justin. It was a pleasure to speak with you here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Obrigada a todo mundo que nos acompanhou até aqui. Queria agradecer também a equipe da Bidan, que está garantindo que tudo aconteça tudo certo aqui nos bastidores do nosso podcast. E vejo vocês no próximo episódio. Até a próxima.